to bring you some great information on fundraising fundamentals. We are going to have some time to present to you information, and you'll be able to ask your questions. So today everybody's microphones are muted to minimize the noise for our speakers, but you can still ask your questions. If you just go to the right on the GoToMeeting dashboard, down at the bottom you'll see a place to type in your questions, and I will monitor those during the webinar and make sure that they are relayed to the speaker. So without further ado, we can get started, and I'd like to introduce to you Kim Gross, and she will walk us through some of the keys to improving the efficiency and effectiveness of your fundraising solutions in 2015. Kim?
Thank you so much, Andy. What I'd like to do today is go through some introductions, so let you know who will be speaking today, talk about some of the challenges that our fundraising professionals are facing and what they're up against, go through some requirements for success, so things that need to happen for nonprofits to be successful in today's day and age, how you can put it all together, so some things you can do today to get your fundraising strategy on the right track, and then some next steps, so things that you can do moving forward. So today you'll be hearing from, who you just heard from, Andy Lenig, who's with Pacesetter Enterprises, as well as myself, I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for Pacesetter. And we'll walk you through some of the things that we've done and how we've helped some of our nonprofit organizations be successful in the past few years. So the main challenge that a lot of nonprofits are facing is how communicating today has changed. It's much more complex. There are so many different channels available today when you look at the web and email, social media, direct mail, calling programs. There's just so much information out there and so many ways to communicate that it becomes overwhelming. And because of all of these channels, we're seeing tons of increased competition for attention. So there are so many messages out there. There's so many nonprofits out there. So how do we get our prospects and our donors to not only see our message but also remember it? And in order for us to do that, it's requiring multiple channels. And that's a challenge for a lot of nonprofits because they have limited budgets, they have limited staff, and it's hard for them to focus a lot of their attention on trying to integrate the right channels properly. So we'll spend quite a bit of time today on how you can do that. And the other challenge that nonprofits are starting to face, and this has become more, this is a newer issue that they're facing, is that donors and prospects are demanding relevance. So a few years ago, it was enough to just put their name strategically on a piece or to add some minimal levels of relevance, and that was enough to give you quite a boost to your solicitation efforts. Today, our donors and prospects are demanding that. So if we're not sending something that speaks directly to them, they're just tossing it. They're not even looking at it. So that's a major challenge that nonprofits are facing. So what are some of the successful organizations doing? What are they doing to make their nonprofits so successful? Well, the first thing that they're doing is focusing on retaining their current donors. So how do we make sure that the donors who gave to us this year are giving to us next year and the year after? So how do we make that happen? They're also, if my slides work here, they're also increasing they're using an increase in personalization and segmentation, so something that I just kind of talked about. They're making sure that the pieces that they're sending, the emails that they're sending are personal, they're segmented, so they're identifying why somebody is giving to their organization, and they're making sure they address that consistently throughout their appeals. They're also going more from an offset production schedule of their printed appeals to digital appeals. And the reason they're doing this, instead of printing 10,000 newsletters or 10,000 solicitation letters, offset, all static, they're able to use a digital process to add some variable segments and to test different messages with different groups to see what works. And they're able to do that quickly and easily without seeing a huge increase in their production bill. So this is something that we're seeing a huge trend in. A lot of our nonprofit organizations are getting away from printing tons and tons of static pieces and looking more closely at their solicitation list and sending more personalized appeals to their top prospects. So what aren't they doing? They're not using messy data. So that's a big thing right here. We spend a lot of time working with organizations on cleaning up their data. So what information do you have? Who's a top prospect? Who's not a top prospect? Why is somebody even on your list to begin with? That's a huge issue that we run into with a lot of our organizations. They're on your list because 7 years ago they attended an event because somebody they know was speaking, but they're on your list, so you're sending 4 appeals a year or 2 or 3 newsletters a year, and it's somebody who probably will never make a gift to your organization. So we want to go through and clean up the data and make sure that everything is clean and consistent, and we're eliminating some of those prospects that aren't true prospects. They're not avoiding the use of relevant messaging, and you'll hear me talk a lot about that today. They understand that it's going to take some time and it's going to take an investment to switch over their fundraising strategy and their fundraising plan, but they know it's needed. So they're not running from the use of relevance. They're not running from changing their strategy. They're embracing it and realizing that they need to change. They're also not eliminating direct mail appeals. This is a question we get all the time. Should we stop sending direct mail? Is direct mail dead? And the answer to that is no. You shouldn't stop sending direct mail. You should stop sending it to everyone. So we'll talk a little bit later. We'll talk about that and how you can look at your prospect list and figure out who should be getting direct mail appeals and who shouldn't. They're also not asking for money in every communication, and I think this is the key too. It's important to be communicating with your prospects and your donors, either thanking them or just letting them know of things going on in the organization without a hard ask for money. Something that a lot of nonprofits get accused of is that all they do is ask for money. That's the only thing they do. That's the only time they communicate with us. And so we encourage a lot of our nonprofits a few times a year just to send goodwill emails out, or to send a piece out to their top prospects just thanking them or informing them of things going on within the organization. They're also not sending in personal thank you notes. So I think we've all been there. We all know those thank you notes that we send that are very static with just their first name, and you fill in the amount of their gift. What successful organizations are doing is they're taking the time to send personal thank you notes to their donors. So thanking them for their gift and giving them examples of what's been done with it relevant to their interest in the organization. They're also realizing that a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work. So they know that they have a diverse group of donors and prospects, and they know that the same approach isn't going to work for everyone. So what are some keys to success? Well, the first thing is that your messaging has to be consistent in all of your outbound channels. So that means that, as we start to integrate more and more, different outbound channels, you've got email, you have Facebook, you have Twitter, we're still using direct mail, you still may have a calling program, your messaging has to be consistent. So from a brand perspective, we have to make sure that the overall message we're getting across is the same for everyone. The other thing that we need to do is look at the giving behaviors of donors. So try and figure out when in the fiscal year they tend to give. Are they giving in the beginning of the year? Are they giving at the end of the year? And how are they giving? And as we'll talk in a little bit, this will help you start to prioritize who gets what and when. So going back to when I had said that we don't want to send direct mail to everyone all the time. So these are the things that you want to start to look at to see when people are giving and how they're giving. If they're giving online consistently, maybe we really cut down the amount of direct mail that we're sending them. If they consistently give at a certain time of the year, maybe we're really hitting them hard with direct mail and they typically make a gift, and the rest of the year we're just sending them emails. So there's ways to look at different things to try and cut down on your budget and to improve your efficiency. You also want to integrate different channels to maximize your outreach efforts. One thing that I like to get across to all of our clients and all of our prospects is that relevant direct mail and email just cannot replace your other efforts. So just because you're adding relevance to your direct mail appeals and just because you're adding relevance to your emails doesn't mean that you should stop your calling programs or that you should stop your personal outreach efforts. All of these are aimed to do is complement your other efforts. So, we see this a lot where clients think that they can add some relevance to the direct mail and they can stop making their personal phone calls and they can stop their calling program. And that's not the case at all. This is just supposed to help give you a boost. You also want to simplify the fundraising process to maximize the ROI. So this is, again, about using the correct outbound channels. So for instance, there are so many social media sites out there, and it simply doesn't make sense to use all of them, at least not right away. So that's where you really want to take a good look at how people are giving, how they're responding, where your prospects are. Are they on Facebook? Are they on Twitter? Do a lot of them go to your website? When you send out your e-newsletters or your email solicitations, do you see a huge jump in your analytics on your site? Are people visiting your website? So which channels are working properly? How much money do you get from the calling programs that you do, if you do calling programs? Do you have staff making outreach efforts? So these are all things that you want to look at so that you can start to say, okay, here are our top 2 or 3 buckets of areas that our prospects and our donors are responding to, and so this is what we're going to focus on in 2015. You also want to track your donor and your prospect activity, and you want to score them based on their engagement and their donor history. So, for example, we take a look at your entire prospect list and say, okay, people who've been giving consistently for the past 3 to 5 years are going to start off with a score of X. Everything they do along the way, so every email they open, every time they click to your website from a link within an email, every time they make a gift, we're adding to the value of their score. So what we're able to do is turn around to our organizations and say, okay, here's your top 10% of prospects based on giving history and engagement within this campaign. So now if you do have a calling program, instead of having to call 10,000 people, maybe you're just calling the top 300. So you're speeding up that process, you're becoming more efficient, and you're able to kind of prioritize who your top prospects are pretty quickly and pretty easily. A big thing that a lot of organizations need to really look at is their stewardship process. When somebody makes a gift, it is so important for us to make sure that we're consistently updating them on things that are happening within the organization. This is huge. Donors want to know that their gift is making an impact on an organization. There are so many nonprofits out there that they can choose from. So when they make a gift to your organization, you want them to feel good about that, and you want them to feel good about that all year. So it's important to be sending, consistent emails, maybe several times a year, sending them some thank you notes saying, hey, just wanted to drop a line and let you know that because of your gift this year, we've been able to do X, Y, and Z. And you'd be surprised at what happens to your retention rate once you start doing that. So some common roadblocks that we see, what some organizations have told us along the way, after we start talking to them about this process and why it's so successful and why it works. The biggest one is that they don't have the money to spend on these additional outbound channels, and I think that comes up 75% of the time. Ironically, a lot of times budgets don't go up. So it's all about looking at your budget today and trying to figure out a way to use those dollars smarter. And this is where, it's a leap of faith, and organizations have to sometimes take a risk to say, you know what we're doing now isn't getting us the results that we need. So we may have to take our fundraising, our advertising dollars, our marketing dollars, and spend it differently, and trust that the process will work. And when organizations do that, they start to see a turn in their efforts. Another question we get, or roadblock I guess I could say, is that we don't have enough data to support lots of segmenting. And my response to that is you probably have more usable data than you think. A lot of times we work with organizations that say that, and when we actually get into their database, we see tons of data that we can use. And the other thing is that segmenting doesn't have to be extremely complex to be successful. So you don't have to have tons of complexity to your database to have a good campaign that uses correct segmentation.
Kim, if I may, we do have a question about that. Is there an example you can give us some simple segmentation that we've been able to take care of there?
Sure. So the first thing that a lot of organizations have is how they're connected to you. So did they attend an event? Have they been a past donor? Were they a speaker at an event that you had? Did they participate in something that you hosted? So how are they connected to you? Almost all organizations have that. So that's typically where we start. So we start to segment. We work with one organization that has athletic camps throughout the year. They have different events throughout the year. Obviously, they have their donors, and they also have they do missions trips. So we look at those different buckets, and when we start doing some segmentation, that's what we start with. So whatever their connection is to the organization is what we start with our segmenting. Good question. Some things that you should be looking at when you're putting your plan together. When do your donors typically give? So do you have certain segments that give at certain times? Are there certain donors who typically give consistently at the same time each year? And this is where we start to look at how can we cut down on what we're sending to people, because obviously print budget and postage, it's a lot. And it's probably one of the most expensive outbound channels outside of radio and television. So how do we cut down on who we're sending to? So this is typically where I start. So if you have groups of donors that are typically giving at certain times throughout the year, that's when we're going to hit them hard with direct mail. How are your donors giving? So if you have donors that are typically giving online, it may make sense just to communicate with them electronically. Maybe we send them 1 or 2 pieces a year, some simple, inexpensive 8.5 by 14 solicitation letter that's personalized to them. But for the remainder of the year, we're communicating with them online because that's how they're giving anyway. So, these are 2 key places to start if you're looking to minimize your print budget and focus on improving your other fundraising efforts. Look to see when people are giving and how they're giving. And by looking at those trends, you're usually able to pull out some pools of people who you can definitely cut down on sending direct mail to. The other thing you want to look at is who's getting the printed appeals. So are you sending, when you send direct mail appeals, are you sending it to your entire list of 15,000 prospects, or are you just sending to lapsed donors? And this is key too, because a lot of times, we've got our live and side pool who, maybe is half of our list, let's just say. So 7,500 of our total 15,000 prospect pool are live bunts and side bunts. So obviously we're sending direct mail to them. But we're also sending every appeal to 7,500 people who haven't given to us once, which can sometimes be a waste of money. So we definitely want to look at that. We definitely want to look at who we're sending printed pieces to. And then we want to look at what types of printed pieces we're sending to each segment. So are we sending really expensive brochures and self-mailers to our non-donor list, which may not make a lot of sense? Maybe if we're going to send them something, it's a simple black and white solicitation letter with a BRE, and we're spending our money on our live bunts and side bunts, or people who have a high propensity to give. So if anything, this is something that you can absolutely easily do. You could leave here this morning and you could go look at your database and say, oh my gosh, we're sending 5 direct mail appeals a year to 15,000 people, and of those 15,000, only 6,000 of them have given to us. So that's the first place you can go to start eliminating some of your costs. The other thing you definitely want to look at are how committed are you to email solicitations. This is huge because emails are inexpensive to send. They're very effective. So you want to make sure that you're committed to sending them and you're committed to sending them regularly. So some things to look at. How often are you sending them? Do you send them twice a year? Do you send them once a month? I don't suggest sending them every other week because then people are going to stop reading them. So you kind of have to find that fine line of what's too many and what's too little. And a lot of times we're able to work with organizations and kind of look at their solicitation calendar and figure out what that looks like. Who's receiving them? So this is where I say send emails to everyone because they're so inexpensive. You're not paying for postage, you're not paying for print, you're not paying for envelopes, you're not paying for return envelopes. So send emails to as many people as you can on that list that you have because they are so inexpensive to send and because it is good brand awareness. Are they tied into the rest of your solicitation calendar? This is key. So to your recipient, your direct mail, your email, your calls, any advertisements you have on radio and television, it's all the same. It's all coming from the same organization. So you want to make sure you have a united front. So even if you segment the messaging to talk to each recipient based on their interests, the overall brand needs to be consistent. And the overall reasons for why you need their fundraising dollars needs to be consistent. The other thing, and I talked about this before, are you sending some emails without a hard ask for a gift? So maybe you're sending an email around Thanksgiving that's just a goodwill email, maybe in the spring. Maybe at the end of your fiscal year, you just send a big thank you email acknowledging what you were able to do and how much money you've raised without a hard ask in it. Those are definitely some critical things that you need to do because if all you're doing is sending emails with a hard ask, chances are people are going to stop reading them.
Kim, I think we've got a little bit of a question on that. for emails that are going out for informational purposes versus solicitation, can you expand upon that a little bit? Give me an example or
Sure.
the real reasons behind that.
Sure. So we typically either around Thanksgiving or around the holidays, we'll send out an email for our clients that is just a goodwill. So maybe it's a holiday e-card, maybe it's a Thanksgiving e-card, just as a, thank you goodwill from the organization. In the spring, we typically send one as well that highlights some of the things the organization's doing throughout the year. And then typically at the end of the fiscal year, we'll send one. That's just a goodwill showing them what they've done with their fundraising dollars. Versus the hard ask, which would be throughout the year, saying, here's what we're looking to accomplish this year, here's what we've accomplished last year, we could really use your gift of X. Good question. Something else that we're seeing a lot of and that we're doing a lot of is integrating relevant video into our outbound channels. And this just totally adds a huge impact to your outbound solicitations. These videos can be hosted on your website, on social media pages. You can send them electronically, and they can be, we do tons of them based on segments. So it can be how they're connected to your organization. So for example, the one organization we work with, if they're connected because their children were in some of the summer athletic camps that the organization provided or hosted, we would have a video focused on that and the different camps that were hosted the previous year. If it's in regards to missions trips, we'd have a video about that, and we'd have people speaking about the impact of the annual fund and how it supports these different trips. So, and you can put them anywhere. A lot of our clients put them on their Facebook page, they'll host them on their website, we send them via email. It's so easy to get those, for viral marketing to happen when you use relevant video. We also do a lot with, go ahead.
Sorry, we do have another question. Do you have any statistics on the use of the relevant video?
Sure. So the range in regards to a boost in conversion rate, so a conversion rate meaning anybody who converts to making a gift, ranges from an increase of 12 to 115% when you add the use of a relevant video. The average lift is anywhere from 30 to 50%, but the entire range is 12 to 115%. So obviously you can see that adding some relevant video definitely helps to boost the numbers. And another point to make with that as well is that these videos don't have to be, you don't have to hire a video production company to shoot these. A lot of times my organization will come and shoot some video, we'll take some still shots that they have, we'll interview some people, we'll put everything together, we'll put it to music, and it's a 30 to 60 second video that they can host. So it doesn't, you don't need to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars, getting this professionally done. Good question. We also use personalized microsites. So this is a key, to really get some relevant information, some relevant videos out to your prospects. So basically everybody has a microsite created for themselves, and we're able to provide some relevant information. This absolutely speeds up the engagement process, which ultimately speeds up the giving process, because you're getting the right information to the right person, things that they want to read in a format that they like to view it on. Everybody's online, everybody's on their smartphone, so they're always going and looking at websites and looking up information. What it does on the organization side is it allows you to track donor behavior. So once they get to that microsite, what are they doing? So we'll put different links on the microsites to see what areas of the organization they're interested in. So if you're launching a capital campaign, or if you have different events happening, or different areas of interest within your organization, we can strategically position some of those links on the microsite and watch what they're clicking on, and we can come back to you and say, okay, so this group of people really was interested in your capital campaign, or this group of people were really interested in this part of what your organization does. So when we send out this next round of solicitation letters and next round of emails, we're going to focus on this topic for this group of people. So it really helps you to continue that personalization and that relevant marketing. Okay, so let's put this together and let's see what it looks like. So the process in regards to the channels that, that you can easily add relevance to would be your direct mail and email. So from there, we lead them all to that personalized microsite. Again, that's where we're tracking all this information. We're adding relevant video. We're adding relevant messaging. We're adding relevant outbound links. And all of that information on what they do is collected in a database. So they're clicking this link, they're watching the video, they're making a gift, and based upon all of that activity, and what they're doing, we decide what their next step is. So do they get bumped into a calling program that we may have? Do they get dumped into the next round of direct mail or email solicitations? Or do they get sent to one of our officers in-house to make a personal call? And, again, that's based on their donor history. That's based on their engagement up until this point. And that's based on, if you've done any sort of wealth screening on your prospects. So if you have people that are marked as having a high propensity to give based upon the wealth screening, that adds some weight to the score, to the score of their record as well. So consistent relevant marketing, everything's connected, everything's tracked, everything's refined. So I'll just show you some examples of direct mail, email, and personalized microsite, kind of what that looks like. So for example, obviously contact information is huge. We all have it. So you want to make sure that everything's relevant. You want to make sure that everything's relevant on the BRC. This is a place where they can update their email address. They can update their mailing address. They can update their phone number. So we always add the person's contact information to the BRC, so it's an easy place when they make their gift. They'll say, oh, that's not my email address anymore, or I changed my cell phone number, or I moved. They can update their contact information very quickly. We also have a variable ask amount within the BRC and within the appeal. This is key. So if you're looking to increase a gift amount from a past donor, you 100% need to start doing this. So you look at their last gift that they made, and that's where you start from. So typically, when you have, let's just say, 3 giving options, the prospect is going to pick the middle option. They typically don't want to give the least expensive option. They also don't want to give you the most expensive option, so they're going to go right down the middle. So if you start, let's say they've given you $25 in the past, so a year ago. The first gift amount in their BRC is $25. The second ask amount is $50. The third ask amount is $75, and within that letter, we're asking them for a gift of $50. Typically, you'll see them make the gift of $50. I think our latest statistic is that 85 to 90% of organizations we work with that do this give what they've given in the past or more, and I think the national average is somewhere between 70 and 72%. So you can definitely see that it'll definitely help boost your numbers. You also want to address their donor status. So if they've made a gift last year, you want to have a strong ask to have them renew that gift. If they are a lapsed donor, so they're a SIBA, they haven't given in a few years, you want to acknowledge that too. So I know you weren't able to make a gift to organization XYZ the past 2 years. We have been doing a lot of wonderful things, and we could really use your support this year, and here's why. Their connections to the organization, I touched upon that. So how are they connected to you? Have they attended events? Have they been a part of different programs that you've hosted or that you've run? What's their connection, to make sure that you touch upon it? And if they have attended an event, we like to include that as well. Here's an example of a personalized microsite. Obviously, here's where you can have your variable video or image. It also leaves you a block to put some variable copy. You can have links at the bottom. You can have links wherever you want. We always put a continuous countdown on our personalized microsite. A lot of times, our prospects don't understand that our fiscal year may not be in line with the calendar year. So they make a gift in May, and we ask them for another gift in August. They're still within the same calendar year. They're thinking they've already made a gift. So we want to make sure that they understand that our fiscal year may run different than the calendar year. And we always want to, if we have them, link our social media links. So here's what the solution schematic looks like. We start with some data modeling and analytics. That's our first step. Again, looking at what data you have, looking at how we can use it. And then we look at how we can integrate that into your different outbound carriers, so your direct mail and email that goes to all of your prospects. And we send them to the personalized microsites or personalized landing pages. And that's where we capture their relevant information. So things that either we ask them directly or places that they click. That's where we're capturing all of that relevant data. And based on their prospect score, which we talked about, that will determine what their future channel looks like. So are they getting a personal phone call? Are they just getting emails? Are they getting some direct mail? What does that look like? And we track all of it as well. So multi-channel response, what does it do, and why does it work? Well, average response improvement, there's been a 45% lift in multi-channel campaigns over single-channel print-only campaigns. So those people that are at least responding. And there's been an increase of 17% in the actual conversion rate. So a 45% lift in people actually responding in regards to going to personalized microsites, and an increase of 17% of those people who actually made a gift. And when you personalize it, you see a lift of 50%. So that's by adding that relevant data. So what do we know about them, making sure all of our appeals speak to them, that's where that comes into play. Some cornerstones for success. What can you do? What will make your annual fan campaign in 2015 blow the one that you did in 2014 out of the water? Engage your prospects through multiple channels. If somebody sees a message in more than 2 channels, it will increase their response rate by 10 to 15%, which is huge. So you definitely, if all you're doing is direct mail now, you definitely want to start increasing your use of email, maybe a calling program, maybe getting yourself set up on a social media site, whether it's Facebook or Twitter. You definitely want to start looking at some other channels. You also want to start building relationships, and I think that adding relevance is a huge part of this. You want your prospects to know that you know about them and that you care about their interest in your organization, and so that's where adding the relevant information is so critical. The quicker that you can build a relationship with them, the quicker that you're going to convert them to make a gift. You also want to not only track results, but use that data. And again, this is a big pitfall that I see a lot of our clients fall into, or a lot of our prospects fall into. They have all of this great data, and they're doing tons of tracking, but they're not using it. And that's where I say we'll look at what's happening. So we send an appeal out in September. We look at who's responding. We look at how they're responding. We look at what they're doing, what their interests are, and we use that information for the appeal that we send in October, November, December. So that's critical. Cross-channel approaches obviously improves your response. We talked about this. There's some clear statistics on how adding multiple channels and adding relevance can improve your response rate. It speeds up the solicitation cycle because at the end of the day, we're catching them in more than one place. We're adding relevance to what we're saying, so they're seeing our message multiple times and the message is speaking directly to them. It improves the productivity of your team and your organization, and that directly ties back to how we're able to provide a prospect score to everybody on your prospect list. So instead of having a list of 15,000 people that you need to tackle and figure out who's going to be giving and who do we call, we're coming to you and saying, here's your top 10%, let's start with them. Here's your top 20%, let's start with them. Here's your bottom 10%, so we're really not even going to touch them except for sending them email. So it definitely improves the productivity of your team, which I think a lot of organizations can use because we're short-staffed and we're definitely short on budget. It increases your retention rate. This is a critical component for a lot of organizations, especially moving into 2015. They need to retain more of their donors. That's through a strong stewardship program. It's making sure that from beginning to end, you're communicating properly with your prospects and with your donors. You're making your thank you personal. You're keeping them informed on what's happening with their gift. And once you start to implement this program, you'll see year after year that your retention rate continues to rise. You also have a methodology for continuous improvement. So you're tracking everything you're doing. There's a system to what you're doing. Everything's connected. Everything's tracked. So you're able to look at every component and see how it fits together and how it's working and what things need to be tweaked year after year. So instead of just kind of shooting in the dark and throwing a bunch of stuff up against the wall and seeing what sticks, you have a method that you're following and a process that you're following, and you can continue to improve upon it. Future of fundraising, if I haven't hammered this home enough, I will now. It's definitely multi-channel, so we can't rely just on direct mail. We can't rely just on email. We have to use different channels. We have to embrace the web. Causation may be impossible to track. What I mean by this is that it may be impossible to track. We sent out an email, and these people gave because of the email. We sent out a direct mail piece, and these people gave because of the direct mail piece. We started a Facebook campaign, and these people gave because of that. It's a combination. So when we're looking at your annual fund plan, your annual fund campaign, we look at how do all of these pieces fit together. how do we strategically send out direct mail and email and launch a Facebook campaign so that at the end of the day our numbers continue to go up? And so that's why it's so important to look at the big picture and to look at how all of these pieces fit together. In order to do that, your donor database has to track all of the channels and all of your interactions. So this is where we look at, okay, not only are they making a gift or not, are they sending in a check, or are they giving online, but what are they doing on the email? What are they clicking on? Are they clicking to their personalized microsite? Once they get to their personalized microsite, where are they clicking? What parts of our website? Are they clicking to the videos that we have? What videos are they clicking on? And so we're able to start to gather some information and start to say, okay, this person for the last 5 or 6 emails has consistently clicked on information in regards to our capital campaign. They're also one of our prospects when we did our wealth screening who has a high propensity to give. We need to be sending someone out to call them, to sit down with them to talk about what we want to do in the future. So that's where we need to start tracking all of the interactions with the organization. I think there's been a fear of using social networks in regards to Facebook and Twitter and how that works and how that can help an organization. It's becoming a critical part of any fundraising program. A few years ago, I remember doing some conferences and some speaking engagements where I said that in a few years, a Facebook page is going to be almost as important as a website, and I think we've hit that point. A lot of times, people are looking on social media platforms to research different organizations to figure out what they're all about and what people are saying about them. So I think if you're not on Facebook and you're not on Twitter, it's something that you absolutely need to get yourself set up on. And the content of that is crucial as well. So what are you saying? It needs to be something that's relevant. It needs to be something that speaks to them, and it needs to be something that's of interest. So next steps, what can you do? What can you leave here today, and do to help with your 2015 plan? Obviously, the first thing you want to do is perform a relevance review of your current content. So how much of what you're doing is relevant? Are you sending out anything that's relevant? And if you're not, how can you? You also want to look at your data. So again, some key things to look at in regards to your data. Who's giving, how are they giving, and when are they giving? So do you have relevant content? If not, how can you get relevant content, and what types of relevant content can you find? And then what does your data say about how people are giving and when? And based on that, modify your annual fund tactics. So just by taking these few simple steps, you're already going to be ahead of the game moving into 2015. And when all else fails, look to others who have done this successfully, who have had a good track record of doing this, who have changed over their annual fund strategy and have seen some tremendous success. So I think we flew through the material, and we still have some time left. So Andy, are there any other questions?
Well, I don't see any. I think we've answered everything that popped up.
Okay.
So we're
great.
In
Well,
great shape
what
here.
What I'll do is I will leave this webinar on for a few more minutes in case anybody has any additional questions they'd like to ask. You can simply type it into your box on the right-hand side. If not, I'd like to thank you all for attending, and the representative who invited you to today's webinar will be following up with you within the next few days to see if you have any other additional questions. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you again.